I'm voting for Trump because he's gonna build a border wall and make Mexico pay for it. I'm voting for Trump because he's gonna implement tariffs and make China pay for them.
Guess who paid for the border wall? Not Mexico, the taxpayer did.
And guess who's going to be paying for these tariffs? We, the consumers.
Trump's border wall cost the taxpayer $15 billion, and he only managed to build like 400-something miles. Much of it just replacing existing wall, and only 80 miles of it was new wall. And when handing out contracts, Trump skipped over the whole competitive bidding process, which would have lessened the cost for us taxpayers. Trump raising tariffs on China will just increase the cost for U.S. companies to buy these products or raw materials. And these companies will just pass the cost of that onto the consumer by raising prices of their goods. It's estimated that Trump's tariff plan will cost the average U.S. citizen $2,600 to $4,000 a year. And how do we know this is going to happen? Because he already raised tariffs the first time he was president, which increased costs for American businesses and consumers.
I'm gonna say the meanest thing I could possibly say to these Trump voters posting self-pity videos because they're suffering due to his policies. Now, I don't do personal attacks, so I'm just gonna tell you the truth, because sometimes the truth hurts. You don't get to complain. You definitely don't get to complain about the lack of leadership or ideas coming from Democrats, because we didn't do this to us. You did this to us. If you and I are driving down the interstate together and you reach over and grab the wheel and you steer us into a 200-foot deep ravine full of lava and sharks because you think big interstate is corrupt and you thought it would be funny to shake things up, when I scream at you as lava sharks eat our legs, you don't get to be mad at me for being mad at you, because it was my idea to stay on the interstate, and it was your idea that ruined everything for both of us. You don't get to ask what Democrats would do differently with the economy. You don't get to ask what Democrats are doing to help us right now. Those are 2024 questions, but we're in 2025 consequences. This era of the United States right now, this is about the president you elected, the cabinet secretaries your Senate confirmed, the cowering Republicans you elected to obey him in Congress, and all of the very real consequences resulting. We told you these things were going to happen, and we gave you lots of warnings, but you grabbed the wheel anyway. If you want to know what Democrats would do differently, look at the track record going back to the Great Depression. Economic growth, job growth, wage growth, retirement plan growth, all of these things have been better under Democratic leadership than Republican. If you like these things, you vote for Democrats, because it's what Democrats do. I don't care if you like the Democratic candidate. I don't even care if you understand how the policies work. And I'm not going to ask you if you believe me, because every chart and every graph that matters at the highest level for the middle class proves me right over the past 100 years. I'm only going to ask you that over the next year and a half, you come to grips with this fact, so you don't make the same mistake again.
And I need you guys to know something, that no matter what MAGA says, they're not okay. They're gonna say they're okay. They want you to think they're okay because eating crow is just not something they're good at. So share this. Farmers are desperately suing Trump to get the Biden grants reinstated before their farms go under. They're not okay. In Texas, Florida, and Louisiana, they lead the list of states with the most people in financial crisis. Those are 3 states who consistently vote to keep putting the boots back on their necks, because racism and Christianity go hand in hand to their own peril. Again, in Glenn County, California, their only hospital in miles is closing. They're fucked. 2/3 of that county voted for Trump. Missouri's biggest nail company just got slapped with 25% tariffs on steel from Mexico. Do you think that company's bound for the wood chipper? Because I do. And this guy who voted for Trump 3 times watched his very own wife, who's been here for 50 years, get arrested because she wrote a bad check 25 years ago, and he cried all over the news. Meanwhile, white people are coming out of the woodwork to go, this is heinous, but they didn't say shit about the brown people. She's the same, she did the same thing everyone else did, committed a crime. Ironwood, Michigan, this is that one in the UP, their only birthing unit within 45 minutes of anybody is closing down. If they want to have a baby, they got to go to Wisconsin to do it. Way to go, MAGA. And all over Reddit, I'm seeing stories just like this. Businesses closing down, hundreds of employees being laid off all over the place. People are struggling, and there's going to be more. These tariffs are only going to shut shut the doors. Doors are closing. Jobs are getting lost. So no matter how much they want to lie to you, please know they're not doing great either. And they're going to lose the midterm so long as we can keep them protected.
We might be starting to see the consequences of that very dangerous rhetoric that the Trump administration and Maga likes to push about immigration. This is Tori Branham, aka Mega Karen, who, with nothing other than her own opinion, decided that illegal immigrants were working at a Hyundai facility in Georgia and decided to report them to ICE. ICE did end up performing a raid at that facility and detained close to 400 individuals, 300 of which were noted to be people from South Korea. I say it was based on her own opinion of the fact that she thought these people shouldn't be working there. The majority of people were short-term workers with special skills that were supposed to be here to be performing a very specific job. An Atlanta immigration attorney spoke with the Associated Press and explained that the majority of people were there under a B1 business visa visitor program, which authorizes them to work in the United States, and that they were not going to be here any longer than 75 days. Now, I say most or many because not everybody was under that B1 business visitor visa program. There were people that were here under different visas, and that is a completely different conversation to have about the way that our immigration system works or doesn't work. This lawyer went on to explain that the jobs that people were here performing are things that we don't have people that are trained to do. And in order to train someone to do the jobs that they were here to do, it would take 3 to 5 years to train somebody. So these people were here to get this facility up and running and get it running with American jobs. As a result of this raid, South Korea is definitely a little nervous, and they are starting to recall personnel that they already have here, saying that they do not want to send any more workers to the United States. And in addition to completely shuttering operations and construction at that Georgia facility, 22 other factory sites around the United States have reportedly been halted. When this administration inevitably tries to blame the Democrats for lack of manufacturing growth in the United States, please remember people like Tori Branham, who again took it upon herself to report an entire factory to ICE because she did not like that people who did not look like her were working there, even if it was short term.
Hello everyone, it's Anthony here, and welcome to my channel. And today we'll be discussing how Maga voters have been deceived over time to believe that Trump policy works. And let me tell you, most of Maga voters, especially from South states, have never traveled for long. They have never traveled for long outside their hometown, outside their states. Because I saw a study claiming that most Republican voters, 64% of them, they have never got out of their hometown. Even if they settle almost 5 kilometers from where they were raised. Most of them. So they don't have this exposure of experiencing how real leaders who value their citizens work better to improve the lifestyles of citizens without gaslighting them. So this is something that these voters have never experienced in their lifetime. So guys, let's continue watching.
A county that overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump is about to lose its largest employer directly because of Donald Trump's policies. Now, this is Greene County, Tennessee, which is home of Artisan and who is the only supplier of penny blanks to the U.S. Mint. And because of Donald Trump's policy to eliminate the penny, they are on the verge of going out of business, which means everybody there will lose their job. Now, there's a trickle-down effect because the people that work there make the money to keep the other businesses in the county in operation. Now, they're begging Donald Trump, please, to reconsider this decision to eliminate the penny, but Donald Trump isn't listening. And once again, we find people that supported Donald Trump that are feeling the effects of his policies, that are starting to feel the hurt, and I could not be happier for them. This is what they deserve. We're all going to be in the find out phase, but it does put a little bit of a smile on my face that the people who were warned, the people who should have been able to see who he was, are feeling it first.
I do actually really give a shit that the farmers are losing their farms. I do actually really care about that. But it's not because I care about those people who literally asked for that to happen when they voted for an administration that wrote down in detail how they were going to do that. I don't really care that they are losing the farms. I care about the farmers losing the farms because it is finally the last great transfer of land and property that these insane oligarch GOP nutcases have been trying to do for decades. This is going to be the last big transfer of property. It already happened with all of our single family homes, all of our real estate. That's all now owned by corporations. This is the same thing is now happening with the farms. This is our American farmland that is now going to be wholly owned by corporations. And Americans who once owned and worked those fields for generations, and I speak as someone who is the first generation in my family who did not grow up on a farm. We owned those fields, worked those fields for generations, and now they're going to be sharecroppers, essentially. They're sharecropping on their own land. I don't feel bad for the people. I feel bad that the farms are now going to be owned by corporations. Does that mean I lack empathy? No, I don't think that it does. I struggle to find empathy for someone who is handed a piece of paper that says, I will hit you in the face if you vote for me. They vote for them, and then they get hit in the face. I don't have empathy for that. I don't have empathy for you causing your own demise, even though all of the rest of us were telling you that's what was going to happen and even voted for that not to happen. We were trying to save your farms. That's what we were doing. You didn't believe the person who wrote down on the piece of paper, I'm about to absolutely ruin your life. You didn't believe them. You didn't learn the lesson that when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. And then you didn't learn it when we said, hey, they're going to do this to you. You should probably not vote for that. You said, nah, racism, brown people, brown people. So no, I don't have any empathy for you. I have a lot of sadness, regret, and general angst about American farmland now being owned by corporations. That is execrable, and I'm really upset about that.
I've been a proud rural American my entire life. But the truth is, in rural America, poverty is higher, wages are lower, and jobs are far and few between. And here's another cold hard fact. Beginning with the New Deal, continuing through to the Great Society, and ending just recently with the President's infrastructure bill, the Democrats in both rural and urban America have fought to provide a social safety net that's much needed in rural America while offering targeted incentives to help rural America grow. And our question is, when are conservatives in rural America going to join us in the fight? Hi guys, my name's Will, your favorite rural campaign and elections expert, and let's talk about it. Here are some hard facts we have to come to terms with in rural America. Nearly 75% of the poor living in rural America come from southern Republican states. Both poverty and our dependence on the social safety net is higher in rural America than it is in our cities and suburbs. In every section of America,
They claim that the Republican Party is the party of the working class. That's what they claim every time. Every time, it's the party of the working class. But does Trump policies really influence positively the lives of the working class? Hmm? Because you saw the other day that this company in Georgia, which is manufacturing electric batteries to use in US, right? This South Korean company, and they deported all the engineers who are expertise brought here to supervise the construction of the company. Eh? Again, you can see even the farmers in Arkansas, they are complaining every time. The tariffs with China is hurting them. These guys, they have not diversified their professions. They either unskilled workers, they are either farmers, they are ranch owners. That's their way of life. And these policies, which are brought into place by Trump, they are really affecting up their lifestyles. They are affecting their economic well-being, which I don't know if it's good.
So Nebraska can't catch a break, right? So it was reported earlier this year that it was quite possible that the state could go bankrupt, right? Because of the tariffs and the farmers not being able to sell their goods. Well, now it's being reported since the passage of that big bad bill that they're about to start closing rural hospitals. In one particular county, in Webster County in Nebraska, they are closing several rural hospitals, and it's going to impact about 3,000 people. But the saddest part of that is it's not only just the rural hospital, it's also the rural nursing home that's tied to those hospitals. So Mima and Pawpaw ain't gonna have nowhere to live. And again, this is another county that voted overwhelmingly for syphilitic Sid. They anticipate that with the closure, they're not going to have hospitals. Nurses and doctors are already starting to quit so that they can go and find other work. So they're operating under a shortage while having to find places to put these people, in particular, the elderly that are in these nursing homes. Because a lot of folks don't realize it's a federal mandate. If I'm not mistaken, please feel free to correct me in the comments, but I believe most nursing homes have to have a certain number of beds to accommodate Medicaid patients. Because all of that is eligibility based on income. So therefore, if you are one of those low wage or low earners and didn't, make a lot of money and you didn't pay a lot into Social Security, you may have Medicare, but Medicare doesn't pay for nursing homes. At least not that I know of. If I'm wrong, I'm open to the correction. But I just, it's like we're literally only 6 months in, and it's been one breaking news alert after another since syphilitic Sid took office. We have not had one day where there hasn't been some form of breaking news that hasn't been bad news. So I get it. All Maga, all y'all heard was he was going to deport people and he was going to build alligator Alcatraz, and y'all thought y'all was going to buy tickets and eat popcorn to watch immigrants fight off alligators, fight each other. I don't know. Meanwhile, who about to go get Mima and Pawpaw when they don't have any place to live? Just something to think about.
Last night, I watched video after video of farmers who might lose their farms because the government is reneging on contracts they wrote with these farmers. Hi guys, my name's Will, your favorite rural campaign and elections expert, and let's talk about it. Now the problem is President Trump's order to freeze most federal grants and loans has created a panic and uncertainty within the agricultural sector, which relies on billions of dollars in direct government assistance for loans, disaster relief, and conservation practices, many of which have been around since the days of FDR, and farmers have begun to rely on them. Now, if you've watched the news at all, you know that a federal judge blocked the order on Tuesday. The problem is, and what the media isn't telling you, is that farmers and ranchers over the last week to 10 days have begun to receive letters telling them that the government may not be able to live up to the promises they made in these signed contracts with farmers and ranchers to improve conservation and increase productivity on the farm. Sadly, I watched one cattle farmer video last night in the state of Missouri where he said that he's going to fall $80,000 short in funding because the government promised him that if he and his family invested in good conservation practices, they would support his efforts with grants and loans. He received a letter in the past 10 days telling him that they couldn't keep their promise even though they have a signed contract. And as a direct result, he's going to fall $80,000 short on his spring loan payment. And the only option he has right now is to sell his cattle. And he needs those cattle because those cattle are going to have calves, and he needs those calves to pay his fall payment. It's a no-win situation, and it's not his fault. My friends, this is the problem with electing a president that knows nothing about agriculture and placing people at the Department of Agriculture whose only understanding of growing crops and raising livestock is what they learned in a YouTube video on the plane on their way to Washington, D.C. To give you an example of the size of the problem, farmers received more than $10.5 billion in direct government payments in 2024, nearly half of which came from conservation programs, and that figure doesn't include federal crop insurance, which accounted for over $19 billion just in 2022 alone. And the consequences not only impact a farmer's ability to pay his loans, they also run the risk of costing farmers the land itself. As an example, the federal government approved a $2.3 million low-interest federal loan to replace drainage tiles in Montgomery County, Illinois. The loan was part of a $307 million USDA grant program to modernize rural drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And for those of you that didn't grow up on a farm, drainage tiles or pipes buried under farmland carry away excess water. Farmers began using them in the 1890s, and many of these tiles in Montgomery County, Illinois are collapsing, and that causes flooding. And flooding prevents farmers from planting their crops. Now, farmers are starting to understand the extent of Trump's lack of knowledge, and they're starting to speak out. One farmer was quoted as saying, Trump has no knowledge, zero knowledge of what's important relating to agriculture, especially agricultural drainage. Unless you think that the grant programs spelled out in the freeze are the only way the Trump administration is attacking small family farms and ranches, remember this. This is just one piece of the puzzle. Before attempting to freeze federal grants and loans, Trump signed an executive order suspending all Inflation Reduction Act funding, including the USDA's Partnership for Climate, Smart Commodities, and a program aimed at supporting sustainable farming practices. The Inflation Reduction Act is a cornerstone of former President Joe Biden's climate policy, and it allocated $400 billion in funding and tax credits to spur conservation and green energy efforts. And many people don't know that billions of those dollars went into agriculture. Now, I know it's easy for Americans who are not involved in agriculture to simply say, well, that's who they voted for, or FAFO. But I'm simply asking everyone to remember that 30% of farmers and ranchers did not vote for Donald Trump. And the consequences of our inability to raise the amount of food that we need to grow to feed our country, and to grow the amount of livestock that we need to grow to feed our country and the world, will be felt mostly by poor people, the elderly, and children.
Turns out, they figured out. Remember what happened in Arkansas? Girl, remember we talked about how them people in Arkansas was crying because it's 7 generations of farming, and that's their generational wealth, and they about to lose their farms, and they going bankrupt, and that the subsidiaries was available to them. The money was available to bail them out. Should anything happen to their farms as far as like inclement weather, whatever the case may be, the money is there. They told them the money is there, but they can't spend it until 2026. And even then, there ain't enough for everybody. Well, it turns out they didn't found out the reason why that the money was pushed back to 2026 and it was included in the big, beautiful bill that they voted for, is because J.D. Vance, the Waltons, and another trillion-dollar company all did that. Yup. They sure did. They also all own they also have stake in a company. I think it's called like Acre something, right? Where when your farm goes into bankruptcy, right? And the bank take your farm, they come and buy your shit for pennies on a dollar. Then they hire you back to work it. They say, well, you can stay on the farm and you can earn the farm back if you work such and such amount of years or do such and such amount of work on the farm because you already own it. and they came and swiped it from right underneath you. In all fairness, we told you. We told you they would do that to you. We screamed it from the mountaintops. We pointed it out to you. We aligned it with historical data. The Great Depression. They did that shit throughout the entire Great Depression and Prohibition era. They also did it during the Civil Rights Movement. They also did it during the Revolutionary War. We told you this would happen. Again. And y'all, baby, Pluto is in Aquarius. And y'all always fucking y'all up real bad. Y'all done put yourselves into another 4-year cycle. That's what they did. They convinced you to self-sacrifice yourself for the next 4 to 7 years. Because even after he gets out of office, you still have to play catch-up. That's a 7-year cycle. You allowed your hate to drive you to the gates of hell. And in return, they got all your wealth. Gave it all up willingly because you hate people of color that much. You self-sacrificed your generational wealth that was already stolen to begin with, right? Self-sacrificed it. Gave it all up. Your generational wealth, your baby's nest egg, generational wealth, gave it all up to them folk. J.D. Vance, the Walton family. Who's the Walton family? The ones who own Walmart. That family. They don't even need it. They was just trying to erase Bill Gates. Bill Gates is also doing the exact same thing. We tried to tell y'all. And Maga has allowed the hate that they have in their heart to not only swipe their generational wealth, that was stolen, by the way, right from up underneath themselves, but every generation that comes back after them, baby, it ain't gonna be no 7th generation of farmers. Ain't gonna be it. They're gonna make sure that y'all go into bankruptcy because they want your land. And then they're not going to get Mexicans or people of color to farm it. Oh no, they're going to get you to because you're familiar with it. And when you refuse to, they're just going to go find some Mexicans, change the law, find some people that they kicked out, put them on the farm, and pay them what they would have paid you. They're not even going to pay them what they used to get paid. They're going to pay them what they paid you. They're going to give them medical benefits and all types of shit to make sure them people stay and they don't leave. They'll even offer them citizenship. Want to know how I know? How do you think they got here in grandeur to begin with? Post Alamo. Clock it. Clock it. Y'all walk right into that shit. Oh my God. When I tell you the ancestors don't miss, baby, they don't miss. When I tell you karma is on her shit, my girl ain't missing a beat. And that's the thing. This how you know you working with the devil. Because you will always lose working with the devil. In the beginning, it'll feel like you've won. In the end, you'll lose way more than what you had prior to when you worked with him. And you know you're working with the devil because he'll always give you a choice in the same exact way that God gives you a choice. He'll always give you a choice. He will always look for your consent. That way you can never turn back and say, he tricked me. No, he didn't. He gave you everything he was going to do to you in a thick packet called Project 2025, which included a subsection called the Big Beautiful Bill. And all you had to do was read. You shot yourself in the foot the first time with Project 2025. Then you supported the Big Beautiful Bill. They fucked you over with the tariffs, increased the prices on the raw materials that it would take for you to continue to do what you needed to do. You were already suffering, and they fucked you over with the tariffs. Then they sent the people that was helping you, the hands that were helping you, for a fraction of what they should have been paid. They sent them home. Fucked you over again. Then they did the Big Beautiful Bill. and stole your shit right from up underneath you. Oh my God. Sorry to them families, but this is what you voted for. It's what you asked him for. He gave you exactly what you said. I want them folks of color gone. And he said, absolutely. And everything else that they touched, everything that they contributed is going with them. Yeah. He gave you what you asked for. You just didn't read the fine print. My God, today. We tried to tell you.
So, guys, I want to ask you really one question. Trump is not a Republican. We all agree that he is not a Republican. Trump, before, he was claiming to be a Democrat. He doesn't even stand for any of our principles, right? It doesn't even stand for any Republican principles. He's not a conservative. You can't claim that Trump is a conservative. So Trump is someone, a populist, who saw an opportunity to fit into a popular political party, got some of its supporters, and then catered and propped up his fan base, which is Maga, and used it to ascend to power. So all his policies, they are populist policies. And you know what's wrong with populist policies? You can't implement them because in the real world, they are not viable. Yes, populist ideologies or promises, they are only good on paper and on the stage during campaigns, but during the implementation, they are not viable unless your plan is to hurt the common man. It's only a problem because you can see the tariffs. Who is paying for the tariffs? You think China is paying for the tariffs, or Brazil, or Europe, or Canada? No, it's the businessman who is importing, then propping that extra cost to the consumer. That's what's happening. So, guys, tell me in the comment section, what do you think of the tariffs in general, the trade wars, mm, the what generally is happening in US? Do we need more civic education in US? Because I think his fan base is growing, and the next person will inherit that fan base, will inherit an intact fan base, and then continue recruiting. Because this MAGA fan base is Republican. That's strong. They are strong Republicans. They will never shift. But in the head, we will inherit the fan base. You will inherit a loyal fan base, and then continue recruiting another one. So the country, we have a problem because we have a generation or a population which is messed up. That's a real deal. We have a population which is messed up, and it's continuing growing over time, over time, over time. So, guys, tell me what you do think in the comment sections. I'll appreciate. Don't forget to like and subscribe.